And the champ is here!
Yes, the man! Give me a hell yeah! What the Rock is cooking.
To be the man, you have to beat the man!
Big Papa Pump! It's your hookup!
Flawless!
Holler! In the image!
Rest in peace.
Raw is Jericho!
What you gonna do when Hulkamania destroys you?
I am the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
What?
Yes! Yes!
Woo!
Yes!
Woo! What?
Yes!
Woo, woo, woo! Woo! What? What?
For the benefit of those with flash photography.
Would you please shut the hell up? If you're not down with that, we got 2 words for ya!
Oh, yes!
What's up?
Excuse me!
It's true!
Hello. Ooh, yeah!
Hey, yo.
I'm awesome!
Yeah! And I quote,
That was what was best for business. We, the people,
believe in the shield.
follow the buzzers.
I'm the best in the world.
The kid do dig that sucker! And that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so.
Have a nice day!
You're welcome.
Today is, of course, the wrestling section of the week. It's Headlocks and Headphones. I am Martin Anderson with you through until 2 o'clock. Today, Raw and SmackDown look just a little bit different because of the draft. And when we talk about Raw and SmackDown, we're going to focus on what happened in the show that doesn't include the draft element. We're going to focus on the draft on its own to look at who ended up where and potentially explore reasons why and find out which brand came out better. Was it Raw? Was it SmackDown? I have my answers, and we'll see what my producer thinks when she comes through as well. The interesting part of today's show is I have definitely not seen AEW this week, so we're going to find out together what happened in last Wednesday's AEW. We are also going to find out what happened in NXT, which I did watch, which was amazing as always. And we have some big wrestling news, not just the draft. There are other things that are making the WWE landscape change, and if you don't know what they are, you're going to find them out in about 35 minutes. We're going to tell you how the landscape has changed in the WWE, and not just $1 billion deal. Something else happened yesterday out of the blue, and we're going to tell you. Here you are listening to Aberdeen Student Radio. My name is Martin Anderson. I know I've already told you that, but I like saying my name. I'm just that vain. If you are listening and you want to give us a shout, you want to speak to me, you want to ask some questions, feel free. It's very simple to get a hold of me. You go to Facebook, you type in Headlocks and Headphones, and you send a little message. If you send a swear word, I don't mind. I'm a grown-up, I can take it. But that's how you get in contact with us, Headlocks and Headphones, or you can reach headlocksandheadphones@gmail.com. That's the email. And we also have a YouTube, which is, funnily enough, Headlocks and Headphones, where we put the shows up minus the music, simply so that YouTube don't take it down. But let's talk about what's happening in SmackDown last week. Now, obviously, it is the draft episode, so what I want to say is, the draft episode, we are removing the details of the draft, because we're going to talk about that later on. And what we want to do is we want to tell you just the action that happened. So we had Seth Rollins defeating Roman Reigns by DQ to secure the first draft pick for Raw. The Fiend grabbed Rollins and dragged him under the ring. King Corbin defeated Shorty Gable's Chad Gable, who's now decided to embrace the fact that he's a short stack, and he's calling himself Shorty Gable. We had Brock Lesnar and Cain Velasquez face off hyping their match at Crown Jewel for the WWE Championship, where Velasquez promised to give Lesnar another scar to match the one he has from his previous defeat. The New Day beat the OC by pinfall, which saw Kofi get Trouble in Paradise on AJ Styles for the win, which I thought was going to lead to Kofi and AJ being on the same brand. Does that happen? You'll find out soon enough. Bayley came out and she destroyed all of her Bayley buddies to face Charlotte for the SmackDown Women's title, grabbing Charlotte for a small package win. And if you haven't seen it, there's videos floating around online of some of the fans actually bursting into tears when she did that. I think that the heel turn for Bayley has been a long time coming, and it's great to see that she's actually trying something different. Although what she appears to have done is change her ring gear and cut her hair. Which I suppose, if you think about it, when a woman breaks up with a man, the first thing she does is she cuts her hair and she changes her clothes. Not that I'm suggesting this is a breakup, but psychologically, you can see what she's going for. I'm going to be honest though, if you're a wrestling fan and you have been around for the past year, you will know the most infectious song that is going in wrestling. And I'm going to play just the first 10 seconds of it. I'm not going to play the whole clip from the Firefly Funhouse, but I am going to play the theme song so you can hear exactly why Firefly Funhouse is so much fun. Now, it's easy to say Firefly Funhouse if you say it really quickly. If you try and say it slowly, it makes you stumble over your words and you mess up.
Uh-oh. Really glad that you're our friend, and this is a friendship that'll never ever end.
So that is how Raw ended on Monday, the Firefly Funhouse. We're going to go into that more in just a second about exactly what happened. But remember, we're ignoring the draft picks when we're talking about Raw and SmackDown. The Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch defeated Charlotte Flair to earn Raw the first draft pick of the night. And what's interesting is Raw won both first draft picks. Andrade beat Ali. Viking Raiders defeated Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode to become the new Raw Tag Team Champions. Aleister Black got a very strong win over Eric Young. Ricochet beat Shelton Benjamin. Braun Strowman and Tyson Fury signed their WWE Crown Jewel contract. We will be going into Crown Jewel a little bit more next week or the week after, where we're going to discuss the matches that are there. But I do want to discuss the idea of the fee that Tyson Fury has allegedly received for his promotional work leading up to it and the gig in Saudi Arabia. $15 million. About 11.6, 11.7 million pounds for what amounts to about 7 or 8 days work, which is I would take that, I'll be honest. So the one thing about this segment was Braun Strowman's always the same. He's always going to do the same, get these hands. It's stale, it's dull, and I'm not a Braun Strowman fan. But what ended this was Tyson Fury grabbing a pen and trying to break it in half as a response to Braun Strowman smashing the table in front of him. The only problem is Tyson Fury's a boxer, so he doesn't have the kind of strength that would do that. What he has is the explosive strength that can knock somebody out with a punch. So when he tried to break the pen, it didn't work. It took 3 attempts. Now, if that was done purely to make somebody in the back laugh, that's hilarious, and I love it. If that was done to make Tyson Fury look like he could break the pen and he couldn't manage it, then that's also the most hilarious thing in the world, just for very different reasons. So the best kept secret made his way to wrestle on Raw on Monday night, and he defeated Cedric Alexander in what was, for me, the match of the night. And that's kind of saying something, because I think there was Andrade and Ali was a really good match, but Buddy Murphy, Cedric Alexander, an understated gem. That's what I like to call it. We then had the main event of the evening, which was the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, the Kabuki Warriors versus Natalya and a tag partner of her choosing, and she chose Lacey Evans, the person that she had this feud with, and she's had matches every week for the past, it feels like the past 20 years, but it's only been apparently about 6 weeks. But they could not defeat the Kabuki Warriors, who look really good right now. Asuka and Kairi Sane look like they could hold that belt for a very long time. Now, what we started this segment with was the Firefly Funhouse theme song, and that's what we kind of ended Raw with. Firefly Funhouse. See, it's easy to say if you say Firefly Funhouse. It's just the bits all around it get jumbled up when you manage to get Firefly Funhouse right. Yeah, I say it quickly. So you had The Fiend. Well, actually, it was Bray Wyatt, who they are one and the same. It's a split personality. If you're not following along, the Firefly Funhouse videos are on the Headlocks and Headphones Facebook page, and they are amazing to watch. When you start watching from the very start, you think it seems like a kid's show. It seems very weird. And then as it goes on, you can kind of realize that it's almost the split personalities of Bray Wyatt. But Ramblin' Rabbit did not, in fact, die last week in the preparation for Hell in a Cell. He was there for this episode, and Bray Wyatt shooed him along when he said, "He's here and I'm scared." We're meant to think that's the Fiend. But in reality, halfway through what Bray Wyatt's saying, in walks Seth Rollins. There's the first person who's ever been to the Firefly Funhouse that wasn't Bray Wyatt or his little puppet friends. And you guessed it, the first thing Seth Rollins did was he burned it down. And that is... it's one of those really interesting things where, again, we are going to talk about the Crown Jewel pay-per-view in more detail later on. However, what I do want to discuss is the idea that what we had was a very bad finish at Hell in a Cell. That bad finish saw Seth Rollins allegedly disqualified, but in reality it was a referee stoppage. It was designed to protect Seth Rollins so he didn't have to lose, but also protect The Fiend so he didn't have to lose. Many people, including myself, said, well, if you want to protect both of them, why book the match? Book both of them against people they can beat and then have that match later on down the line. Instead, Vince McMahon decided he had to have this match. And what's more interesting is even though it didn't work and they had to find ways around not giving us an actual finish, they've decided to book the match a second time at the Crown Jewel pay-per-view. This is after last week they accidentally leaked it was going to be on the Survivor Series pay-per-view. Now, the leaks that are happening in WWE just now are really funny. I'm going to talk about one that happened on Friday when we talk about the draft section of this week's wrestling. And I think, hopefully, people are going to realise that not only is wrestling dealing with a lot of change right now, but sometimes you have an idea of what you're doing and you have to change it at the last minute because somebody puts basically the script up on your own website. Tonight is NXT and AEW. We're going to be talking about that after the next song. But what I do want to talk about just now is some of the wrestling news that's been going on, because there's some major changes happening in the wrestling world. Not just the move to Fox, not just the roster draft, which we are going to discuss when my producer comes through after the news. What we have is some big changes behind the scenes in WWE. Now, we're not far removed from the big change that saw Paul Heyman, the executive director of Raw, and Eric Bischoff, the executive director of SmackDown. There was a tweet come out yesterday from Eric Bischoff where he wished the best of luck to his successor as the executive director of SmackDown. So it appears that Eric Bischoff is now gone entirely from WWE after what appears to be 3 or 4 months. Perhaps he facilitated something towards the move towards Fox, but his role is now maybe no longer needed. But it has resulted in the person who actually got him into the company, Bruce Pritchard, has stepped into the shoes as executive director. Mike Kanellis, who has been doing the downtrodden husband storyline for WWE, has requested his release from WWE. He asked for his release on Monday when he said that he came to WWE to wrestle and those opportunities just are not available. His wife, Maria, has, however, stated she has not asked for her release. So that's kind of interesting. Dr. Dolittle has a brand new movie. It comes out in January. Robert Downey Jr. plays Dr. Dolittle. And the only reason I mention this in a wrestling show is because John Cena is actually one of the big stars in that movie as well. So that could be very interesting when things happen. In January, likely to get WWE having John Cena and maybe Robert Downey Jr. on the air to try and promote that film. Now, in terms of everything else that's happening in the news, the New Japan Pro Wrestling website announced that John Moxley from AEW was stripped of the IWGP US title, and that was not due to any kind of disciplinary issues or anything like that. The weather issues they're having in Japan meant that John Moxley could not make it safely to Japan, so he was stripped of the title, and we saw Lance Archer become the new champion at the New Japan event that did go ahead, because they ended up actually cancelling one as well. In other news, and this is WWE related, Scarlett Bordeaux has pulled out of all independent bookings apart from perhaps one or two, and the rumour is that she is signed with WWE. She is somebody who Impact Wrestling put quite a lot of effort behind, but they were mistreating her husband, so she decided, is it husband or is it just fiance? Mistreated her partner, we'll go with that. So she decided she was going to leave rather than deal with it. In relation to the draft, they put quite a lot of effort into the draft this week, and WWE had so many celebrities that they even had the NBC soccer team, so the ones who actually do the English football over in America, even they were talking about who would be their draft picks. So WWE gained, through their Fox deal, of course, quite a lot of publicity this week, which can only help them. And I think that's the same for the Tyson Fury angle as well. A lot of people are saying, Tyson Fury isn't driving numbers, the ratings aren't going up. I think today you have to actually look beyond simply the ratings. And I know this is going to seem like I'm an apologist for WWE, and I mean this for AEW as well. The numbers fell for AEW from 1.4 million viewers in America to about 1.1, give or take. So everybody was saying, well, that's a really bad thing for them. What people don't understand is that, that's a great rating for the time slot for TNT. But beyond that, what we're not seeing is the numbers on social media engagement, which also generate revenue. We're not seeing for WWE the amount of people that are watching NXT on the network, the amount of people who don't have the time to watch Raw on a Monday night. Perhaps students getting up the next day if they've got an exam, or perhaps somebody who has an early shift in the morning, they DVR it in America, or they watch it on the network, which WWE don't release the figures for how many people view stuff on their network. So it's not just a one-dimensional image. It's not just a two-dimensional image when it comes to figures in wrestling, because we've never had more engagement with these talents. We've never seen more. If you combine the YouTube video views of Being the Elite, more people are watching Being the Elite than are watching Dancing with the Stars in America, or the UK equivalent, Strictly Come Dancing, which my son, who is only 2 years old, seems to really like as well. So the interesting thing here is, as we talk about viewing figures going down, we're only talking about the conventional figures going down. We're not discussing the ideas about social media interaction. We're not talking about the over-the-top media which WWE has with the WWE Network. And of course, companies like New Japan and Impact Wrestling have that as well. How many people are actually watching through there, which are generating additional sources of income? What we do is we try and find a theme every week for the music, and I know sometimes it's really difficult to work out what that theme is. This week it shouldn't be all that hard, I'm going to be honest, based on the songs that I've played. Anyway, let's not talk about the music, let's talk about the wrestling, the Headlocks part of the show. You didn't see NXT this week, I didn't see AEW this week, so we're going to be having to listen to each other really closely, and we'll decide quickly which is the better show of the two. Okay, so the Cruiserweight Championship opened the show, Leo Rush versus Drew Gulak, and we had a brand new Cruiserweight Champion in Lio Rush. It's now called the NXT Cruiserweight Championship. It isn't the 205 Cruiserweight Championship, so that's quite interesting. I do think we will eventually see an end to the 205 Live brand, but for now it's cool that we have Lio Rush as Cruiserweight Champion. Somebody who, on the first episode, I actually really enjoyed his stuff, and it's so much better than him running around going, Bobby Lashley, every 30 seconds like he did when he was on Raw. Rhea Ripley, one of my favourite female wrestlers WWE have right now, defeated Aaliyah via submission. We also had the Forgotten Sons beating Breezango. The Forgotten Sons are really cool. They've kind of got that Sons of Anarchy type gimmick. The match was awful, but Forgotten Sons are cool. Cameron Grimes defeated Boa via pinfall as Killian Dane came in and attacked. Cameron Grimes is that little annoying-looking guy with the big facial hair and the beard. The big scruffy hair and beard, who won his first match on NXT in like 6 seconds. There was vignettes shown to hype up the Keith Lee, Dominic Dijakovic angle, and there was also the Damian Priest and Pete Dunne angle that was getting a little bit of hype as well. Damian Priest attacked Pete Dunne. So that was kind of interesting to see. Damian Priest, somebody who is a former Ring of Honor champion, great wrestler, and it's great to see him feuding with Pete Dunne as well. Roderick Strong defeated Isaiah Scott. Isaiah Scott, his name escapes me before he went to WWE, but he was one of the indie standouts. He was in MLW. He'd been all around various companies. I'm shocked to see Roderick Strong beating him so quickly. I thought they would try and protect him, but he has had some matches on 205 Live, so it's kind of cool. We did then have Velveteen Dream, Tommaso Ciampa intimidate the Undisputed Era, which... Velveteen Dream and Tommaso Ciampa are two of those guys who are going to be looking to fight for that top title in the company. You throw Finn Balor in there as well, and I think NXT have probably got one of the strongest in-ring cards in the wrestling business. We saw Bianca Belair defeat Dakota Kai. Dakota Kai is just returning from injury not that long ago, so it's interesting to see that she's losing. But Bianca Belair is the one with the big long hair. And the main event was two undefeated wrestlers, Walter versus Kushida. And it was a brutal match. They beat 7 shades of you-know-what out of each other, and Walter ended up getting the win in the end. And I've looked around. I'm not one to believe in grades. I don't like the grading system. If I enjoy it, I enjoy it. If I don't, then it's AEW. That match actually has not received less than a grade A or a 5-star in any of the places where I've looked at it. So if you are out there, go check out the NXT show and see the Walter versus Kushida match. So what we're going to do is we're going to let you go through your AEW, just for what happened on the show quickly, and then we're going to talk about the previews of what's coming this week.
Well, unfortunately, to say today, the AEW show is actually more story than wrestling.
Okay,
so we have the Private Party and the Young Bucks kick off the Tag Team Championships. Private Party beat the Young Bucks.
That's the tournament to crown the first ever.
Yes,
Yeah.
the tournament to crown the first ever. And the Young Bucks are now out of the running.
Yeah, that's the belts that were actually revealed by Jay and Silent Bob last week.
They don't look all that bad. They're a bit busy, but you know.
I think they look like toy belts, but I'm a wrestling belt snob.
Okay, so Jericho's new stable entered the ring. Jericho was celebrating and taking credit for AEW's ratings on the debut show. He hyped up every member of his group, introducing them, who they are, background, etc. And then introduced Jake Hager, dismissing the We Are the People gimmick as a stupid idea from bad creative.
That's the gimmick that he took to MMA and various other wrestling companies and has made lots of money out of, right?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, that's the gimmick that also, I believe, was not creative's idea. It was actually Dutch Mantel's idea.
Yeah.
But hey, let's not insult Dutch Mantel. I'm not brave. Dutch Mantel might be old. He might have a crazy-looking beard, but I would never insult Dutch Mantel.
He's a very clever man. We have Jericho promoting Jake Hager as the baddest guy on the card, himself included.
Okay, that's interesting. But at the same time, I think Jericho doesn't plan on being there very long, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And then he starts going into Cody Rhodes, hyping up their match for Full Gear. He introduces the new stable as the Inner Circle, which I think is a pretty cool name.
In a way, yes, but I think the inner circle is obviously Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, and everything. So perhaps they're trying to push that it's a dig against the guys who are in the inner circle.
Yeah. Darby Allin defeated Jimmy Havoc by pinfall in the number one contenders match, meaning Darby Allin has a title shot against Jericho in next week's show.
I think they're dishing out these title shots a little too easily, but that's just my opinion.
Especially since we haven't actually seen matches from them in the previous pay-per-views,
Yes.
as far as I know. Rio and Britt Baker beat Emi Sakura and B. Priestley, that's how you say it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Will Ospreay's partner, B. Priestley.
Well,
she's the one who ended up having a legitimate fight at the last pay-per-view.
Well, Baker tapped out Sakura for the win, but because Baker and Priestley previously had rivalry at Fight for the Fallen, Baker actually suffered a concussion at the hands of Priestley. So I think they're trying to build that rivalry back up again.
Payback is a you-know-what, as far as I can tell.
Absolutely. John Moxley defeated Shawn Spears with a paradigm shift, which actually looks pretty cool. It's like a modified version of what he had in WWE. But obviously we don't talk about that.
Yeah, we can't talk about WWE during AEW, even though half the roster is WWE.
Pac joined the commentary team during the match to complain about a lack of championship opportunities, despite the fact he's never lost a match thus far.
Yeah, and when you look at people like Kenny Omega, you look at others who have lost matches and still walk straight into a title match. How can Pac, a person who's travelled the world and is a major star for that company, not get a title match, but Darby Allin can?
Talking of Omega, post-match he appeared with a barbed wire baseball bat in hand. He threw it over to Moxley and dared him to use it.
Is this not the segment where you actually had Pac run from the commentary table and smack Kenny Omega behind the head?
With a steel chair, yes.
With a steel chair, yeah. So I haven't seen the show, but I've seen that clip because, you know.
And the commentary team, as always, as expected by JR, commented on an alliance between Pac and Moxley. Which is confusing because I think Pac's meant to be a face, but then Moxley's with the inner circle.
Is he with the inner circle?
He's been aligned with them in the past few segments.
Has he not just shown up at the same time as them, though?
Possibly. Well, the inner circle defeated Dustin Rhodes and Hangman Page with the, was it 5th loss now for Hangman Page since he started with the company?
Yeah, which is weird if you try to build them up.
Exactly. And then a brawl broke out post-match between the inner circle, Dustin and Hangman Page. Hager and Page faced each other outside the ring, and the heels dominated until the lights went out. And all of a sudden, there goes Cody. Cody and Jericho faced off until MJF entered the ring to save Cody. And he beat every member of the inner circle with a steel chair. Because, you know, that's what we do in AEW.
Well, it's clear he learned from his dad and how to book people, isn't it?
Yeah. The inner circle dominated again until the Young Bucks appeared, and at this point there's just so many people in the ring it's hard to keep track. And the show ended with Al Lin appearing to attack Jericho, hyping up their match for next week.
Yeah. So he's the one who, I believe he's the one who fell on the cracker barrel on that pay-per-view, and we didn't really like it.
No.
But what are you thinking so far of AEW? I mean, obviously, we can criticize everything. Like, we can criticize every show for something.
The wrestling is solid. I think that although they do some spots that I would argue are far too dangerous if you're wanting to be on TV every week, the wrestling itself is solid. The women's match was very good. It was very strange, though, at one point, what's her name? The champion. She actually got lifted up over her head.
Rio.
Yeah. By someone that should never been able to lift someone that size.
I think what's quite interesting for me with AEW is it's almost like they're trying to establish people a little too quickly. So obviously Sammy Guevara has been thrown instantly into a very high position. And then you have others who have been thrown quite quickly into a very important position as well. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of a problem for AEW is a lot of those talents are not known. And now that's going to... It almost seems like they're rushing things for me.
It seems to me as though they're just building up a one-storyline rivalry and then branching out off that with other things.
I mean, the big... I always said the first 3 months, you kind of have to write it off. I mean, it's not that it's going to be bad stuff. It's just that you kind of have to figure that they're going to need time to establish who they're pushing. They're going to see who the fans are liking, who they're not liking, and it's going to allow people to kind of find their level. But when you've got one of the guys you want to build around Adam Page basically getting booked to lose in most of his matches, for me that defeats the purpose. But let's look forward to tonight's show, if you're watching live.
Tonight's show, Chris Jericho defends against Darby Allin in a Philadelphia street fight. Rio defends against Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. And the AEW quarterfinal matches, there's 2 of them. SCU versus the Best Friends. And the Jurassic Express versus the Lucha Brothers.
Okay, so have you seen much of the Jurassic Express?
I've not. I think I saw their entrance where there was a dinosaur and then there was the Jungle Boy, and it was all very strange.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think they're very entertaining for what they do. I think the one problem is that the guy who is Luchasaurus is a former WWE guy, and he's bitter and angry that the system didn't give him his chance. So he created a dinosaur gimmick. The one thing that kind of amuses me is Joey Ryan is somebody who says he's a big star but hasn't been picked up by AEW. You would expect, seeing as they've picked up quite a lot of people for their show, you would expect them to have picked up somebody like Joey Ryan, who allegedly can draw an audience. But let's not go down the route of talking about talents and people who have none. Let's talk about the preview for what's happening on NXT. We have the return of Tommaso Ciampa, who faces off against Angel Garza in his first match back after neck injuries. He actually stated that his one goal when he comes back is he wants Goldie back. Goldie is the men's World Heavyweight Championship. We also see Tegan Nox return to NXT. Keith Lee and Dominic Dijakovic have a match, which has been labelled as the rubber match, so it's the decider. And we also have Pete Dunne looking for revenge and payback against Damian Priest. Damian Priest usually wears contact lenses, and he looks pretty much like you would imagine somebody from The Crow to look like. If you were to give him the white face paint, he'd look like Sting from WCW. But we are going to take one more song break, and very quickly we're then going to come back and we're going to talk about the draft and find out the lay of the land. And once we've discussed where everybody's went, we're going to decide who got the better end of the bargain. Was it Raw or was it SmackDown? If you've no idea what was going on, so Raw got 3 picks to SmackDown's 2 because it's a 3-hour show instead of a 2-hour show. They'd set it up with war rooms, so the USA Network were picking their talent and Fox were picking their talent. I'm going to be honest, it threw up some really big surprises, but we are going to find out very soon exactly where everybody went. We'll find out the better of the 2 brands. I know what my call is. We're going to find out what the producer thinks. So what's your name now? Are you still just called Zoe Styles?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So the draft, which started on Friday on Fox and continued on Monday on Raw, was an attempt to re-split the brands. And what's quite interesting is that, I mentioned it briefly earlier, somebody leaked the script on the WWE website. So it wasn't actually a script saying this match will go here, this match will go here. But it was basically the draft picks in order was released several hours before the show. And somebody saw it and thought it was just basically the pool list. So the pool list for the people who could be picked. But it wasn't. In reality, it was every pick in order.
Well, somebody got fired then, presumably.
Do you know what? It's been happening a lot in WWE. They have also spoiled the Fiend versus Bray Wyatt being added as Fiend versus Seth Rollins being added as a main event on a pay-per-view.
I was going to say, the Fiend versus Bray Wyatt would actually be quite an interesting match given the split personality.
It would indeed. Now, let's discuss the picks. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through night 1, we're going to go through round 1, round 2, we're going to discuss who went where, and then we're going to move on to the supplemental picks, then we're going to move on to night 2, and then we're going to discuss last night's game-changing draft that had people move from one show to another in exchange for draft considerations. That's what it was called by Triple H. But if this doesn't make sense just now, trust me, it will make at least slightly more sense in about 8 minutes when we've discussed it. So, remember we had Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins. The winner got the first draft pick for their brand. Seth Rollins won, so Raw got the first pick, and they picked Becky Lynch. The first pick being Becky Lynch is a big deal. This means that Becky Lynch is obviously, as far as WWE are concerned, the biggest star they have. Now, what you need to consider is WWE are going to make sure this draft doesn't split couples up. This is something they've done for the past few years. So every time you're looking at this, you have to now look and realise, okay, Becky Lynch is on Raw, so Seth's coming to Raw. So let's see if that's what happens. The number one pick for SmackDown was Roman Reigns. Then Raw picked the OC, AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson. SmackDown chose The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. And then Raw picked Drew McIntyre. A massive call for a guy from Ayrshire who's a Rangers fan to be in the first round of draft picks on the first night. Round 2 saw Randy Orton to Raw, Sasha Banks to SmackDown, Ricochet to Raw, Braun Strowman to SmackDown, and Bobby Lashley to Raw. Remember, this is the 3 for Raw, 2 for SmackDown. Tag teams count as 1 pick. Tag teams can be split up. And that's what happened in round 3. Alexa Bliss drafted to Raw. Lacey Evans drafted to SmackDown. Kevin Owens drafted to Raw. The Revival to SmackDown. As the tag champs, it makes more sense. And Natalya to Raw. Round 4, the Viking Raiders to Raw, who became tag champions on Monday night. And Lucha House Party to SmackDown. Nikki Cross to Raw, which puts the Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross tag team back together. Heavy Machinery to SmackDown, and Street Profits to Raw, who finally got a little bit physical on Raw this week when they were attacked by the OC. We didn't mention that when I was talking about Raw, but I will be honest, we did get to see a different side to the Street Profits rather than just them cutting fun promos backstage. We had Apollo Crews, Drew Gulak, and Heath Slater were actually drafted to SmackDown as part of a supplemental draft over the weekend that then added the B team to SmackDown in round 2. But during that draft, we had EC3, Eric Young, and Sin Cara drafted to Raw. So the lay of the land, who would you argue had the best first night?
Absolutely Raw, by a mile. I think
Absolutely.
there's 1 or 2 standout stars that went to SmackDown that will highlight their card.
Revival, Roman Reigns, for example.
The Fiend.
Yeah, The Fiend,
And
absolutely.
And you know what? I'm so happy he's got drafted. He's
Absolutely.
got a family.
I think he's got kids. He's
got kids, man.
So WWE Draft Night 2, remember it was Becky Lynch versus Charlotte. Charlotte replaced the injured Sasha in that match, and we saw Becky win. So Raw got the first pick again. So Seth to Raw, Brock Lesnar to SmackDown. Take a drink because I've spoken for quite a while. Charlotte Flair to Raw, The New Day to SmackDown, Andrade with Selena Vega to Raw as well. We then move on. So obviously with Zelina Vega coming to Raw, that would give you the hint that Aleister Black's coming as well. Round 2, the Kabuki Warriors, the women's tag champs, drafted to Raw. SmackDown took Daniel Bryan, Rusev to Raw, Bayley to SmackDown, and then Aleister Black to Raw. Round 3 saw Cedric Alexander to Raw, Nakamura to SmackDown, Humberto Carrillo to Raw, Ali to SmackDown, and then Eric Rowan to Raw. Round 4, I know, we're coming to the end, honestly. It's a 3-hour show on Monday, so they had extra round picks. Round 4, Buddy Murphy, Jinder Mahal, and R-Truth to Raw. The 24/7 Championship was a USA Network creation, so that's why it's there. Then we had Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode and Carmella to SmackDown. Carmella to SmackDown makes sense. She's in a relationship with Corey Graves, so that's why they're together on there. Round 5 saw Samoa Joe, Akira Tozawa, and Shelton Benjamin to Raw. The Miz and King Corbin to SmackDown. 2 very huge draft picks that really will help out SmackDown. Round 6, Rey Mysterio, Titus O'Neil, and Liv Morgan to Raw, with SmackDown getting Elias and the newly named Shorty Gable. So who won round 2, do you think?
Again, Raw's got the far better talent. They've got some new names on there as well that can make quite a big difference. It's exciting to watch. I think that although SmackDown do have some highlight stars, their mid-card is lacking a little bit.
I think that's maybe the problem. And I think we're maybe going to see some changes coming over the next few weeks. Because what we do have as well is we have the undrafted free agents. Now, these people will be what's called picked up over the next couple of weeks in dribs and drabs. And we're going to talk about the list of people who are actually in that section. We have Cesaro, Authors of Pain, Hawkins and Ryder, Dana Brooke, Drake Maverick and his wife, Fire and Desire, Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, Luke Harper, Mojo Rawley, No Way Jose, Sarah Logan, and the Iconics, and they're just the people who were actually in the draft pool.
I'm quite surprised that Sarah Logan wasn't drafted, considering the Viking Raiders actually went to Raw.
Well, she's lost quite a lot of weight, so I think they're going to try and maybe rebrand her as something else. But I thought her being the manager for them made perfect sense.
The same with Cesaro. I think Cesaro's a very solid talent, and he's worked hard.
Sometimes, though, in American football, the free agents, they kind of become the most popular girl at the dance. So maybe Cesaro could be used in that role where he shows up in Raw, he shows up in SmackDown, he shows up in NXT.
I'm just happy they got rid of the wildcard rule.
Absolutely. The wildcard rule is a very big part of what's wrong with WWE. So to get rid of it is really good. Okay, so what we actually have to talk about as well is that going forward, Raw and SmackDown have separate rosters. Do you see any call-ups coming from NXT?
To be honest, because I've not been watching NXT recently, as that is your kind of domain, I'm not familiar with the top of the card. I would have liked to have seen something like Velveteen Dream come up and have a shot. But I also think that the NXT brand needs some big stars to stay so that there's not that big gap between those still being trained and those roadworthy.
Do you think they could lose somebody like, for example, a Johnny Gargano or a Tommaso Ciampa without it killing the brand, particularly if they have Finn Balor coming back, and then you still have, obviously, the Undisputed Era. Walter's going to be coming up for that title very soon, and then, obviously, the North American title as well.
I think NXT can afford to lose some names without the brand suffering, but my concern is, will a Tommaso Ciampa or Johnny Gargano get a decent run in SmackDown or NXT, Raw even? Will they get lost in the shuffle?
I think that there's a very solid argument for that being a concern.
I mean, it's what happened to Pac. It's part of the reason why he arguably went to AEW, because
that, and Vince McMahon wanted to turn him into a superhero. So we're going to talk about this. This is the last point I want to talk about today. So allegedly, Vince McMahon was the person who came up with the finish for the Hell in a Cell match. The one that was meant to look like a referee stoppage, but the fans took as a DQ. Do you think that Vince McMahon is the problem with WWE right now? Because apparently he was seen backstage laughing that fans were angry at the finish to that match.
I think if he were to take more of a back seat and let other people kind of control more aspects of it, I think he definitely still has a role in WWE. I think especially on Raw, he does have that quirk where something he writes is absolutely phenomenal. Like the Brock Lesnar being Universal Champion, not being on TV all the time, it really, really made fans angry. Same with the Money in the Bank gimmick. He came out, turned it into a stereo box. As far as I'm led to believe, that's all Vince.
And in cooperation with Paul Heyman as well.
And I think being able to get that kind of rise out of fans is a very strong point that you want to keep around. But when you're holding newer talent back because you maybe don't rate them as highly, although they are arguably better than the talent you've got, that's when it becomes a problem. When you hold the reins too tightly and the superstars don't get a chance to extend their personalities.
Is that maybe what killed WCW back in the day?
Well, there are some warning signs with AEW going down the same routes. You know, lots of high-paid wrestlers, no full-time contracts necessarily.
See, do you know what? I get criticised because I'm a bit harsh on AEW. I want AEW to succeed because I love wrestling. I love watching wrestling. You've seen how much wrestling I watch at home. I watch it all the time, and that's the thing that intrigues me. People think I don't like it, and I really do. So I'm hoping that AEW actually start doing some more house shows. Maybe not as full a schedule as WWE if they want to protect their wrestlers. But I'm going to have to leave it there because we're going to end.